Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Nash, and this is AAPG Academy. Really thrilled that you're here. And as we get started, I'd like to say that this is our fifth event for the AAPG Academy. And I'd like you to think a moment about whether or not your AAPG membership is up to date, and take a moment to renew, or if you are not a member, please apply. And we'd love to have you join us, because this is just one of the many benefits that you get for being a member. And there are other many different things. For example, we have our annual convention that's with this SEG that will be at the end of this month in Denver. I'd like to encourage each of you to think about going ahead and signing up and actually joining us in Denver. All the safety precautions are being taken. And before we introduce our speaker, Bill Fairhurst, who's going to talk to us about developing the ideal mix and capabilities for the energy transition, I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to Linda Sternbach, who's our Vice President of Sections.
Oh, hello. Well, you're in for a great treat on this program, and Bill has an excellent talk. I will again plug, because I'm the Vice President of Sections at APG. Please consider going to Denver for the Image Conference. And if you check the website, it's now got all the titles and the speakers listed under each day. So I think you'll find there's a very worthwhile material there, and they have a very interesting bit of social activities as well. So please consider going to Denver, but there is an online option. So you can register to see talks online.
Well, thank you, Linda. So we have a chance now to have a presentation by Bill Fairhurst, who's really done all kinds of things in the oil industry. He has an illustrious career, and he also has the opportunity to share some of his experiences to give you career guidance, which is incredibly valuable. So welcome, Bill.
Well, thank you very much, Linda. Susan, certainly appreciate that, and appreciate the opportunity to visit with everybody here today. And I hope you all enjoy this program. This is something that we've run a number of different times at different groups for AAPG and SPE and Petroleum Landman's Association. And so it's something that we're very excited about doing. So let me see if I can get my screen shared up here. And Linda or Susan, are we all back to the title slide?
Perfect.
Okay. Well, again, Susan, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. What we're going to be talking about is a couple different things in developing your capabilities, and it's really kind of looking at yourself and seeing what you're best suited for doing. And we'll talk about that as we go on in the program. These are areas that I've been talking to the industry about since about 2015, as the career transitions really got started. And then I developed that into discovery, into what makes a good creative exploration geoscientist. Well, you all know, and Charles Sternbach's listed down there in his Star Creek Energy. He's been doing discovery thinking forums for the past, Linda, I think there's been 25 of them or so. I don't know, that's been a little bit less than 25 years, but 25 of those discovery thinking forums. And so he and I got together and started doing a joint program on discovery thinking. So we'll see some of his material in here too, and we'll reference that. Well, what we're going to look at today is who are you, and identifying some of your strengths and some of the things that you're good at doing. And then we're going to look at, what are you passionate about and what motivates you? Because people that are really good and really successful in their areas of expertise are not only the ones that are good at doing it, but they're also very passionate about what it is that they're doing. And then next or last, we're going to look at what does society want? And I think that's what a lot of us are asking right now, and that's the transition that we're seeing. When I say society, we're looking at this at a macro level. Obviously, we've seen shifts in society, not only our national society, but internationally, we're seeing a shift with petroleum. And sometimes when we're talking about those macro levels, we're talking about the industry, and the industry has also undergone a number of shifts. And then we can get down to the micro level. And when we get to the micro level, we're talking about individual firms. And so sometimes some of these effects are what's going on at your individual firm. But to figure out where we're going to go, some of the best ways to know how to do that is to know where you've been. And then we can figure out from where you've been what the best path is for you. So we're going to look at those subjects. Well, as we talked about, this is kind of developed out of a number of different joint programs. At the very end of this, we're going to be building a career roadmap. And one of the last times this was presented was to the Geosciences Student Expo here in Houston. And that's exactly what we did, the program that we're doing at the end. So Susan has sent out to you all, I think very recently, a worksheet. If you can, at your computer, go ahead and print that worksheet out. I know a lot of people like to work on the computer, but I'd like to work on hard copies at the end of the presentation. So while I'm talking here for the next little bit, maybe 30 or 40 minutes, if you can get that a sheet printed out so you have that handy when we get to the end of this presentation, that'd be very helpful. Well, Susan's developed a great program is for AAPG of going through this energy transition and doing a number of different jobs and where you might go with your career, including geothermal energy. And there are more programs on geothermal coming up. You can stay in touch with Susan about those. Critical minerals, structural geology, and remote sensing. And so I'm not going to talk about those areas of domain expertise. I think those authors obviously presented that all to you very nicely. The one thing that I would encourage you to do is do some research in the number of people that are getting employed in the path that you're going to look at to make sure that that's a market that's really attractive. Some of the new things that are coming up might only employ a couple of geoscientists. And so it's not going to take hundreds and thousands of individuals. Other areas might take hundreds and thousands of individuals in the future. And so you want to keep that in mind as you're defining your final path. So what we're going to do here is how to define what you're best capable and best suited and what you're willing to do and what society wants you to do. So I'm going to have a number of questions along the way, and we'll stop and think about these. So question number one is, what's success? What does success mean for you? It's not anybody else's definition of success, but let's take a minute and think about that. And when we talk about success, we're talking about it at three different levels. We're talking about near-term success, we're talking about an intermediate and long-term success. And so what are your thoughts about what that means? Success can be defined in a lot of different ways. Some people, I think, when they first think about that, they think of positions and power and financial reward. And those are certainly levels of success. Those aren't everybody's goals. A lot of people want to benefit society. They want to work for the Peace Corps. They want to do other things in life. Other people want to have a comfortable family life. They want to be able to take their family on a vacation every year. Some you might be thinking about eventually that you might want to retire. So success is not defined by anybody else. It's defined by you individually. And so I'd like you to give that some more thought in the future. And you'll be defining your career success as we develop these paths and these goals in this project. But we're going to start and finish our presentation with you. I've already asked you to think about success and what's that mean to you individually. And we're going to end up the day with you. So this yellow circle now represents areas and domains where you excel. What are you good at? What are you good at? And you're probably better than average at a couple things. And so when you compare yourself to your peers, or you think about yourself academically, when you were in school, there are probably subject areas that you had average performance for yourself. Not anybody else's average, you're average. You had areas that you were a little bit weaker in, and you had areas that you were stronger in. So think for a minute, what were some of those domain areas where you excel? Not only academically, but if you're in your career already and you have 5 or 10 years of experience, or if you have 30 years of experience, you'll probably be able to identify a couple of these domain areas where you're just a little bit better than your average self. And you excel in these domains because of your innate abilities. Some people are just really good at things. First time they try them, and the more they practice and keep going, they're just really good at those. Well, your innate abilities can take you so far, but it really then determines at your level of education, training, experience, and don't forget about developing soft skills. And it's funny, a lot of people are very good at a lot of the soft skill areas. Some people aren't, but everybody can develop soft skills. Well, we talked about innate abilities. Well, why education and training? I think most people are aware of the story of Michael Jordan trying out for the basketball team when he was a freshman or sophomore in high school, and he failed. He didn't make the team. Michael Jordan not making a high school basketball team. He's probably trying out for freshman or JV. Pretty amazing. So what did he do? He was motivated, and he spent that year training for himself. So by the time he came back for his sophomore, junior year, he was able to make the team and excel from there. So our second question, given these areas and domain expertise, which do you excel at and why do you excel at those particular things? So a little bit more concretely, thinking about the areas that you excel at, well, what's your measure? How do you define that? And think about why you excel in those particular areas. Do you know certain talents that you have? Do you have certain education levels that other people just don't have in those particular areas? Well, these are areas of your strength. And so it's not only important to know what those strengths are, it's important to know why you have them. Were they innate? Did you develop them through training and education and experience on your own? Well, are those by themselves, this is everything that we're talking about in this yellow circle, are those enough for you to succeed? Well, the answer is going to be no. And we're going to look at a couple of reasons why and what we need to attach to that. Those are all very important areas, and we need to understand that yellow circle, what domains you're good at and why you're good at those particular domains. Well, now this blue circle is going to represent what you're passionate and motivated to achieve. Well, are those necessarily the things that you excel at? They can be. And if you're lucky, you're going to find maybe at the end of the day or during your career, you're going to find these opportunities that's a great match of things that you excel at and things that you're passionate about. I love playing golf. Absolutely love playing golf. But it's not one of my domain expertise. There are a lot of people out there that are better than me playing golf, but I'm passionate and motivated about it. It's important to know the difference between those different areas. So the third question, what are you passionate and motivated about? So take a minute and think about that, separate from what you have expertise in. And when you're thinking about these things that you're passionate and motivated about, think about it in two different areas. Think about what you're passionate and motivated about that could potentially be domains that you would use at work, but also think about things that you're passionate and motivated about that aren't current work domains. And why I say that is, it's interesting that you might be passionate about something and it's not currently a work domain for you, but it might be at some point in the future. So think about those areas of things that you're passionate and motivated about, domains that you currently use at work and you currently see in your career, and then things about you that you're just passionate about that you're not necessarily using today in work. Two different areas. Well, now obviously what we're going to do is we're going to look at that overlap between those things in areas, domains which you excel, and you know why you excel, and questions about things that you're most passionate and motivated to achieve. So you can see, depending on the person, the intersection of those circles could be huge, it could be small, or it's going to be something in between. So we developed three regions. We've already discussed two of them. Those regions include, over on the left-hand side, things that you're good at doing, but you're not really passionate about. So you might really excel in something, but it's great that you excel in it, but doesn't really get you excited on a daily basis and passionate about. On the far right, We've already talked about some of these things that you can be really passionate about, but you're just not, you just don't excel in those particular areas, and they're fun for you to do. And obviously what we're looking at is, or we're looking for this intersection. We're looking for the region which represents things that you're good at doing, passionate and motivated to do well and to succeed. That's the goal, is looking for this intersection in the middle. Well, we want to look at one more thing. We want to now look at what are the needs of society. And I think instead of the word society, we could say macro level, because you could think of society, you could think of the entire world. You can think of society as national society. You can think about your state down to your community level. You could also think about the industry. You know, what are the needs of your current industry? What are the needs of other industries? So society can mean society, or mean anything at the macro level there. Could even mean micro level type things. What are the needs down to your current company level? Well, what we're going to look at now is the region of the intersection of all three of those circles. That region represents things that you're good at doing, you're passionate and motivated to do well and succeed, and society places value on your contributions. So I put a dollar symbol there, and I don't mean to be materialistic, because I think of that dollar symbol as just the intersection of all of those different areas. And it has either a monetary value or it has an intrinsic value for you. As we talked about, working for the Peace Corps, being able to do things like that might be your goal. So you can replace that dollar sign with things that have value for you. Well, why is that important? Well, you can be great at things and you can be passionate and motivated, and they intersect in that upper portion of that circle. Well, if society doesn't place a value on them, then those are just things that you're going to be doing on your own individually. And society doesn't place a value on them. And so those won't be areas where you're going to find jobs necessarily, or you're going to be able to seek out society to help fulfill that portion of your life. Well, we know that over time, I've shown this red circle changing. Well, that's, society has changed. Society is changed about their reflection on oil and gas industry. Even individual firms in the industry is changing. So I'm moving that red circle. Well, it could be that your domain expertise increases, so that yellow circle moves closer to the blue and the red. So these could increase or these could decrease. Or you find a new passion when you're at work, or you find a new passion when you're doing something out in the community that you might be able to incorporate in work. But I'm showing that this red circle is shifting. And what we're seeing, obviously, in the petroleum industry is we're seeing a shift away from petroleum geologists doing some of the work that they've been doing for decades and centuries. And we're seeing then that we're having to shift individually into new areas. And so that's the shift that's being represented by that circle. Well, what do we do to find success then within the industry, and what are successful people? Well, we're going to look at these various elements here. We're going to look at your education and your career, lifelong learners. Critical and creative thinking, we'll spend a fair amount of time about that. Intelligence, we'll just touch base on. Well, I think these are the important things that define a successful career path, and finding a connection between what you want to do in your job, in your career path. Well, the first one that we started out is that we're well educated in what we want to do. And so in the petroleum industry, usually most of the people that are working professionally have college degrees. A lot of people have master's levels degree and higher, multiple degrees in different areas. And that puts you on your way. And you're really starting to get down that path. We're going to look at thinking domains in a minute. We'll come back to some of these subjects. Well, your first 10,000 hours, and this is borrowed from Charles a little bit, Sternbach, your first 10,000 hours was about 5 years of your career. What you're really doing is obtaining, the majority of what you're doing is you're obtaining more domain expertise. You don't come out of school and initially you're able to do your job functions really well. And 5 years, these are just round, 5 years is a nice round number. 10,000 hours is a nice round number. You put in typically about 2,000 hours a year in your job. Some people do this sooner, some people do this longer, but you really need to work at the very basic domain level expertise. We'll look at that when we talk about sciences next. Well, your next 10,000 hours, you're going to look at combining these things with other areas of work, and you're going to combine various domain expertise. And so you have to have obtained that first 10,000 hours, or maybe multiple 10,000 hours to be able to do that. And then we'll look at career and lifelong passion towards education. And that's important to do, as you never want to stop learning. You always want to be a learner, and that you can be doing that formally, or you can be doing that informally, but you always need to be training yourselves and always learning about new things. Well, let's talk about critical and creative thinkers. And first, we're going to look at critical thinkers and how do we develop critical thinking. Well, this was done in the 1950s by Bloom and developed Bloom's taxonomy, and this is used in education a lot. Well, the first thing that we do at the very basis of the triangle, the strength of that triangle, is that you have to remember the information that you're given. So when we're first starting out in elementary school all the way through high school, typically, what we're trying to do is remember as we move into middle school to high school. We're going from just remembering math tables and multiplication tables and how things are spelled and how the English language works to understanding them a lot more thoroughly. And so that's going from the level of just being able to remember to going to the level of understanding. And actually, academically, you can do very well with just these two levels of Bloom's taxonomy in learning and remembering and understanding. So you can go all the way through college and you can be an A student, and you never develop further than these first two levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Well, the next three levels up are, there's a bar there because there's a little separation in these, and that's when you jump up and you take your knowledge and your understanding, and you begin applying that. And once you're applying it, you're analyzing. And of course, as geoscientists, we're doing all this all the time. And this is one of the reasons that geologists, and especially petroleum geologists, are so well suited for other jobs and other careers, because we're already at these levels, probably by the time we got into master's programs, probably even before that. And then finally, you're getting up to a level of evaluating. That usually doesn't begin until you're working well in your career and you're able to look at not only your own work, but others' works and compare and evaluate what's going on. Well, these are the critical thinking domains, especially by the time you get to the top of these and you're analyzing, you're evaluating critical thinking. And so those are very important domains. Again, as I said, academically, you can do very well by just staying in those lower two domains. But in your work life, those that are going to excel are getting to these upper levels of learning domains on Bloom's taxonomy. Well, I've already mentioned, and this appeared in the Wall Street Journal about the time I was doing these series of presentations, that a lot of the large universities, especially, and the University of Texas was cited in this study, and a couple others that are well known, and those are great universities. And what they do is they test students coming in at 18 years old, and then they test them again when they're graduating seniors, either somewhere between the age of 20 and 25 typically. And what they're finding is that the large universities, and usually it's the large universities because they have a lot of students in those classes, really aren't developing very good critical thinking skills. So a lot of this is going on when you're starting your job. And where we find people developing good critical thinking skills are smaller universities, because they have more contact with the professors and they're challenged more directly on a daily basis to think out of the box. And that's what it takes, is not just repeating back knowledge that your professors have been giving you, or people that are your mentors are giving you, but applying that knowledge and having critical thinking levels on it. Well, let's move from critical thinking to creative thinking. Well, Bloom's taxonomy, once we get past the critical thinking skills, and again, there's a big gap and a big jump here, and we get to the level of creative thinking. And this can be discovery thinking in exploration work. It can be taking the next step when you're working as a production geologist could be a lot of things in life. And when you see a word slide up there, please start reading, because I'm not going to stop and repeat all the what you have there, because I know you all can read that very quickly. But this creative thinking level is not a continuum. It's not somewhere where everybody is going to get to and continue to be successful, although everybody is a creative thinker. And we're going to see in a minute, a lot of animals are creative thinkers. But it takes an additional level of insight. So you have to basically walk yourself through those earlier steps. You have to have a great knowledge and a great understanding before you start analyzing and evaluating what's going on. And once you've gotten to those levels of thinking, then you can get to this creative thinking level. Well, when I was in elementary school, one of the different definitions that separated humans from other animals was we use tools. Well, that worked for a while until they realized that a lot of other primates use tools all the time. And we even find that crows are very smart birds. And, so obviously then some crow figured that he could use tools. There are other birds that do these kind of things too. And they pick up sticks and they poke them in holes to be able to get the insects out of those holes. They're using tools. So, the first bird that was doing that was a very creative thinker along the way. And so the other birds that subsequently have done that either did that by being creative thinkers themselves, or they did that by watching others, but it was a very creative step. Well, Steve Jobs, obviously, and again, if you read that while I'm talking here, Steve Jobs, obviously being a very creative person himself and working in a very creative industry, was asked about creative thinkers. And so these were some of his thoughts. I don't necessarily agree with everything he said. He said that people just saw something and they kind of feel guilty about it, and they were able to go on with it. He did state that it's too rare of a commodity. Well, everybody's creative, but what he's thinking about is moving the science, moving the understanding somewhere. That is a rare commodity. And not a lot of people in the industry. And of course, he's referring to the high-tech industry there, not our industry, with being able to do it. Well, here's some definitions on creativity that I was working on before I found that quote from Steve Jobs on where we were as an industry and as a group and what we needed. And this fit very well with what I was working with Charles Sternbach on in discovery thinking. And basically, as geoscientists, what we do on a daily basis is a lot more creative thinking than people are doing in most other jobs. And creative discovery and thinking, although it's not a common trait, most of us all have some level of it, and geoscientists are just very good at doing this. Well, we've looked at education, we've looked at critical and creative thinkers. Well, why are geologists and petroleum geologists so good at doing this? And this actually is from the first homework assignment I ever had in physical geology in school. And we're going to stay with this for just a minute and explain this. And this says that if we look at the y-axis, this is the success in developing laws. And on the x-axis is complexity. And so if we look at the basic sciences, math, physics, and chemistry, and with all respect to our friends in those fields that are very intelligent people, they're relatively simple sciences. And they're relatively simple sciences because they're non-complex. There are a lot of laws in mathematics and chemistry and physics that we have to follow. So to be creative in those fields, basically what you're doing is you're following the laws and you're taking the next step in understanding. And then as we go to the right, we're getting into more and more complex laws. So engineers are really closer to where physics and chemistry is, and they see geologists and they think, well, geologists really don't work with real data. Well, this is partly why, because partly what we work with is we have to know chemistry and physics and mathematics, but we have to apply it in a way that most other people don't do. And that you'll see this is developing our critical thinking, our creative thinking process. Well, what I've done is I've taken that slide and I've expanded it to some of the areas that we know. So on the top, again, we've got the natural sciences and some of the things that we do as geologists in the natural sciences. And then we move from left to right. We are increasing the complexity because there are fewer laws And we have to interconnect a lot more different areas. You can see petroleum systems is over on the far right-hand side, and basin analysis. Well, that's a lot more combination of thinking than some of the other areas that are over on the far left. And then down at the bottom are some of the other principles that we work in that are mostly the social sciences within the oil and gas business, land and business development, and economics. Well, is there any evidence to indicate that that's true? That not only is it a higher level of critical thinking and creative thinking, but also that it takes more time to develop, and it's more, there are different types of individuals that do that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Nobel laureates in those areas that are circled in red, because those were Nobel prizes are awarded in the sciences, and see what happens with that. So we're going to go from physics and chemistry through medicine and then over to economics and literature left to right. And if we look at those distributions color coded, and the key down at the bottom is opposite of the color patterns, but you'll see physics, Nobel prizes in physics, and the arrows, by the way, are the mean, but you can see the distributions of physics. Its mode is actually in the mid 40s, even though it extends out through the 80s. Now, remember, if you win a Nobel Peace Prize, it's probably awarded 5, 10 plus years after you really made the discovery also. So there are a lot of very young people in the pure physics and chemistry being in the yellow. And as we move to the right, the ages are increasing, and we're moving from left to right on the complexity of sciences. Well, where do geologists fall? Well, geologists certainly fall on the extreme end of that. And why is that? Because it takes the 10,000 hours and a lot of domains to learn these expertise. And then as a critical thinker and a creative thinker, it takes years past those domain expertise areas to combine these in different areas. Well, and that's what we just looked at there. Well, so the point again is spend your first part of your career, the first quarter of your career, you should be spending developing domain expertise areas, because then starting in the second quarter of your career, you're going to be doing these more critical thinking skills, combining different things. And these combinations is what makes us creative, by doing the critical thinking in all those different areas. Well, a couple of other interesting things is if we look at the age of noted achievement, and this is across all disciplines, that if we look at, these are 3-decade intervals drawn as histograms through after 1965, so we probably could put another curve out there. Well, those are moving to the right. And so it takes more experience now to do these type of critical thinking than it did 100 years ago. Why? Well, the whole world is more complex. Science is further advanced, and you have to have a better domain understanding, which takes a longer term to develop. The final area we're going to look at is on the x-axis is increasing in understanding, and the y-axis increasing in content. And we basically, again, go from becoming data and information experts as we're developing our career early on, finally going up to knowledge and wisdom. So if we look at areas of experience goes across all those domains. Well, you can't develop an understanding until you have knowledge. So this, again, kind of following Bloom's taxonomy here. And then we develop good common sense. Well, you can develop good common sense early, but if it's not based on data, information, and knowledge, then it's not very useful common sense. And then finally, we think about those people that have a lot of wisdom and insight, and that develops much later in a career. Intelligence, I'm just going to spend a minute on, because it's very difficult to define intelligence. The important thing here for us is, when we're thinking about developing our own careers, is there's a lot of different intelligent domains also. So here's just 10 different areas that we measure intelligence on. Well, lawyers and teachers and historians, their areas of expertise are what the American education system is based on, which is verbal linguistics. And those areas are number 10, and let's see what else on this, probably number 2, fluency on here. So if those are your areas of expertise, moving into areas like law and writing and reading types jobs are a better match for you. Well, what are most geologists? Most geologists are visual mathematicians. I'm a visual mathematician. I'm much better in those areas of expertise and probably a smarter level of intelligence in those areas than I am in verbal linguistics. And it doesn't mean I'm poor in neurolinguistics. It just means I'm better in that. And so understanding what your area of intelligence is and where you probably are better than the rest of the crowd is very important. So most geologists would be a mix of probably number 6, which is numbers and spanning memory, and then number 9, spatial orientation and visualization. And I think most of you work in those areas, you'd understand that. But understanding what your level of intelligence is, which goes back to the domains that we talked about on there. Final area we'll look at is timeframes and planning in various different timeframes. Well, if we look at timeframe thinking, most people, 90% of the people, think in operational timeframes, which is a year or less. So some people have 1-day planning timeframes, and you know these people, and they go to work, and when they start in the morning, their whole day is planned about where they're going to be by 5 o'clock at the end of that day. But there are a lot of skills and a lot of trades that, that's fantastic. And that's all you need to be thinking about. Most geologists are able to think well past that in strategic timeframes, strategic plans, and strategic long-term plans. Well, we're going to look at that a little bit differently. Again, we're going to take your visual expertise, and we're going to look at age down at the bottom on the x-axis from younger years to older years, and then these strategic timeframes going up the y-axis. So you can see they're labeled just the way they were on that original graph down at the bottom in green, operational timeframes. Well, there, as I mentioned, 90% of the people are going to spend most of their career in that 1-year time frame, regardless of what their age is. Well, other people are going to follow that second slope up, and so they might start in a 1-year time frame, but throughout their 20s, they're starting to think in longer and longer time frames. And you get to the age of 30, well, that person's potential is that they might continue to work in those same type of time frames over a longer period of time. Or you can see that upper dash bar, they might start to accelerate as opposed to that person in the upper right. So we want you to start thinking in these longer time frames to be able to think about your strategic planning. Well, let's start tying this all together. We got to the critical thinking, we got to creative thinking. Well, with creative thinking, you want to start thinking in these strategic time frame planning periods. Well, let's start targeting that a little bit more for you. And so this part of it, what we're going to ask you to do is start to think about guideposts for you. What are some of your plans and your thoughts and your vision for positive things that you would like to happen? And I'd like to just take a minute and think about that in the near term. What positive things would you like to see in the near term? For a lot of us, it's transitioning into new jobs. What job am I going to have 6 months from now, and where you want to be? You also want to think in these mid-time timeframes that we discussed, which would be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years at the most. Where do you want to be 1 year to 5 years? And then you want to start thinking about the longer term, more than 5 years. What are your plans? So think about those 3 different levels. What positive things would you like to see in your life in those 3 different timeframes? Well, we're business. You've all heard about doing this before. We write a strategic business plan. And what we do is we want to say, what problems do we want to solve? And why do we have to do this? Well, we have to have a strategic business plan, and we have to have a well-written strategic business plan if we want to get financing, if we want to get people to support what we're doing. We have to figure out what problems we want to solve, whom are your targets, what type of projects are prospective for your company. You want to define your products and your service, why you are uniquely qualified to do this individually and as an organization. And then you have to start planning out your revenue costs. And typically, if we're doing that in a business plan, we do that in the first year. We would do 1 to 3 year, and we do 3 to 5 year timeframes. Well, we need to take that same strategy to our own career planning. And so what we're going to do here now at the end of the presentation is we're going to write your own business plan, but we're going to do it like geologists. And what do geologists like to do? Well, most geologists I know like to make maps. And so we're going to make a career map. And that career map is going to be your strategic business plan for your career for the next 6 months, for the 1 to 3 year time frame, and for the long time frame. So you all were provided a worksheet from Susan, and hopefully you've printed that out. If you want to do it right on the screen and be able to save it on the screen, you could do that. But I like to do this hard copy. And there are studies that show that even people that have grown up in the computer generation that are used to reading on the computer screen, regardless of what generation you grew up in, if you've got something in hard copy, if you have a textual copy of something in reading, or whether you're doing your own work, you're going to remember it much better if you do it by hand. And that's why I wanted you to print this out and do it by hand. I first did this exercise when I was 26 years old. I still have that career map. And I don't pull it out all the time, but it's amazing to me when I pull it out how well this has worked for me. And I think it can for you. I originally did this when I took a career planning and placement course as part of an MBA program when I was in my mid-20s. Well, what I want you to start with is I want you to start with that sheet that's on the left-hand portion of your sheet, which is talking about what you've accomplished and what your career goals are. And so you can see that this starts down on the y-axis. It starts at a young age, and it's every 2 years just because of space limitations, going up to the age 80, and you can keep that going on past well past 80 if you'd like to. But the first thing I'd like for you to do is, whatever age you are, find that on that chart. And I'd like for you to draw a horizontal line across that first column for your current age. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by going backwards. Start down at the very bottom. So there's space down there between 16 and 18 years old. And what I'd like for you to do is, we stopped and thought about some of those positive things. Now I want you to go back and I want you to think about some of those positive things and significant accomplishments that you've had from the age of 16 to your current age, that line that you've got on that paper. And what are some of those big accomplishments and those big positive milestones that you've had so far? So the first one, obviously around 16 or 18 years old, you probably graduated from high school. And that needs to go on this list, because you probably couldn't get into college until you had your high school degree. So the first thing you do is, whatever age that was for you, between 16 and 18, 19, 20 years old, write down when you graduated. What age were you when you graduated from high school? Well, the next thing on the list might be you went to college, and a lot of people knew what they wanted to do when they went to college, and so that would be the next milestone, is that you knew when you went to college that you wanted to study geology, or maybe it was you were halfway through college. I was halfway through college before I really decided that I was really passionate, and it was an area that I could excel in, was geology. So write that down where it was. For me, it was 20 years old. For you, it might have been going in at 20. It might have been, a little bit later on, and put that down. Well, did college lead to your graduate program? Or did it lead to your first job? Or what did it lead to? So I'll let you take another minute and fill all those things, kind of thinking about that. Then my next milestone coming out of graduate school was getting a job with Marathon Oil Company, who I worked with for 15 years and absolutely loved. But there were, within that 15 years, there were additional milestones of when I had transfers that led to more job responsibility, or when I had some significant additional training. So I'd like you to fill out all of those items up to your current age. So let's take a minute to do that. All right, those are all strengths. Those are all part of your background. Those are all things that are going to lead to you excelling in the future. So now I'd like you to look at right above the line. You might be in a job and in a career that you love and it's going fantastically. Well, where's that going to take you in the next 1 to 3 years? And so start to think about those. Many of us are going through transitions. And so we might not be where we want to be right now, but we've got a goal of where we want to be 1 to 3 years down the road. So let's look maybe 1 to 3 years above that line and put down at least one, maybe a couple significant events, positive significant events that you'd like to see happen within the next 1 to 3 years. Everybody's plan is going to be different. It's going to be different not only because of your strengths and your skills, going back to the beginning of the presentation, and what you're passionate about doing and what you want to do. It's because everybody's path up to this point has been very different. We'll think beyond that 3-year time frame. Let's think about a 5 to 10 year time frame. Where could you see yourself being? And I think there's important things to think about here. You know, what's realistic and what's a little bit of a stretch. And there's nothing wrong about putting both those things down. You know, where could you realistically be in 5 years from now? And where's that stretch career position that you would really like to be? And you can put that down too. And then for some of you, once you've done that, start looking at those longer term timeframes. You know, I don't know when you want to, end your career. My wife has always known that, I probably will never retire. I love what I do. Her plan is I will retire at some point. But you look at that chart and kind of think about, do you want to retire? Do you want to transition into something else later in life? That's kind of the route I'm on. I'm transitioning into new things right now. And so that's happening later in my career. I put it up till 80. Some people want to go that far. Some people even further. One of my mentors, Herbert Hunt, is still working at 92, 93 years old. So there are a lot of people in the oil and gas industry, in academics and other areas that I know that are continuing to go on well past the 80 years that I've put on there. All right, let's move, thinking about those things. And of course, I know you can't get that all done, but if you've got this worksheet, and if you haven't finished, you'll have time to go do that on your own, and that will be your homework assignment. But let's go to the next level. And again, extend that line that's your current age and extend that into the next column, if you would. And what we want to do here is we want to look at going back to 18 and then going to the next level above your age of 18 over on the left-hand side, some of those big positive accomplishments that you had. And here we're going to write down what got you to those levels and only work up to the line of your current age, if you would. Well, what got you into college? Well, you did well enough in high school that you were accepted by a college. That's a very positive event. And you probably had some great people that helped you along the way. Well, those are some of the things that you did to get to those next levels. And then college led to either graduate school or led to your first job. And put down the how you got there, the training that you needed to have, the people that influenced you along the way, the people that you knew along the way. And the people you knew might have helped you out by recommending that you talk to somebody else that might have gotten you into graduate school. They might have recommended how you need to move into those new positions. So some of those things are things you did on yourself. but I want you to recognize the people that helped you along the way. That's very important in your network as that develops. Now let's start to look above the line. You have some things over on the left of where you want to be 6 months from now, where you want to be 3 years from now, where you want to be 5 to 10, and where you want to be somewhere later in your career. Well, I'm just going to pick one out. Let's say I want to be president of an oil and gas company and I'm 30 years old. Well, there are a lot of experiences that I'm going to need. There's a lot of training that I'm going to need. There's a lot of things that are going to happen between my current age of 30 years old and where I get to be president of an oil and gas company. And when are you going to be president of an oil and gas company, or a manager, or when am I going to get to a certain senior level of geologist, or if I'm going to make a transition, what training do I need to make that transition? So you might be right at that line of your age, and you're going to make a transition from petroleum geology to geothermal. Well, you're going to need to go to some AAPG training programs that are being offered through Susan's group, other groups. You're going to transition into mineral exploration and development. There's additional training that you'll need. Some of those that would be near term, you probably have a better idea. Some of those that are long term, you might not have a great idea, but you have some idea of some additional skills or some additional training that you're going to need to get along the way. And so you can fill out that next portion of the column. Yeah, obviously, we don't have time to do all of that right now today, but I want you to get thinking about, I wanted to take time to share some of these thoughts with you as you do that. Well, I've added the other two columns, and again, what I want you to do is go back to those columns the same way we did the other ones. Well, that is, draw that horizontal line of your current age across those two columns also, and then go back down to the age of 18 and think about your family and how your family helped you get to where you wanted to be, and what you want to do with your family, working all the way up to your current line of what your current family situation is, or what your current important social groups are. And hopefully we all have those. And then extend it out a little bit more than just your immediate community to a little bit broader community. And these are things you want to do that might be outside your work, and they might be related to your work. Well, how can they be related to your work? Well, because I was involved with some community things, they provided leadership opportunities for me before I was ever given those in my career. But because I had some of those community leadership things, and eventually led planning groups, and then eventually sat on some boards in the community, that helped me in my career. So these things are all interconnected. Well, the other important part about that is, if you want to shoot to the sky over on the left-hand side, you're going to have to make some sacrifices with family and community. So you need to think about doing that. So you could think about the interconnections going back to the first column, and you can think about some of what's the important column. Is it the community and family column? Is it more the career column? And you need to think about those things in parallel, I think. And then finally, I put a career goals out there, or financial goals. And I didn't have that originally when I did it, but I think it's important to start thinking about doing that. And I think that's important to start thinking about early in your life as you possibly can, of, what are your financial goals? Some of the things we talked about earlier is, well, do I want to take a vacation every year with my family? Well, that's a financial goal as well as a goal within your family. But if you're doing that, then your ultimate savings at the end of your career might not be as high. Well, you benefited along the way. So those are trade-offs that you need to take a look at as you're setting up your financial goals. So I think when you get to those last two columns, if there's significant people in your life, write that down yourself, but then, talk with those significant people also. And, you don't have to share this worksheet with them, but when you're thinking about near-term and long-term goals, I think that would be important to share to those people. Well, what have we talked about? We've talked about the things that will help make you successful in your career, the education and the domain expertise that you need to acquire, that you need to be very proficient in domain expertise so that you can get to the next level of critical and creative thinkers. We talked about intelligence and then matching up intelligence with what you're thinking about doing for your future career. If you're thinking, I want to become a lawyer, well, do you just love to read and write and speak? I mean, if you've got those kind of abilities, then that be something. If you say, well, I'm really good at these visual things, then I think you need to say, well, subsurface geology in some way is what I really want to be able to do. So that's what in the intelligence section there. We've looked at long-term planning. We've looked at short-term planning and everything in between that you can continue to do on that worksheet. Figure out what your passions are professionally and personally. How are you going to continue to learn and make that an important part of your life? And you've got creative options out there, and you need to research those creative options that match the type of things that you've made on some of the lists that we're working on. And always remember, you're filling not only your own needs, but you want to find a match of filling the needs within society, because that's how you're going to get best rewarded, either monetarily or through the intrinsic value of what you do for other people. Well, we've looked at these shifts and why we're making these transitions now. Sometimes we said my domain expertise increases, and so that yellow circle will start to intersect more of the blue and the red. Sometimes society changes, and that's what's happened to us over the last couple of years. The price of oil started falling in 2014. Society's decided it shifted away from some of the things that we do really well, but there's other areas that we can find the intersection between what we're good at, what we're passionate about, and what society needs. And the final point is geologists, and especially petroleum geologists, are suited for so many other excellent roles. We've been well trained in areas of domain expertise. We're great critical thinkers. We're great creative thinkers. There's so many different jobs and career paths where those skills, where we have probably developed those more than our peers at equivalent age within what we do. And so you are much further ahead than people that are looking for those type of jobs. And those are the type of things that I think you'll be successful at. I wish everybody the best of luck. AAPG is working really hard to help people make this transition. Susan's got a lot of great programs. A lot of other people have those great programs. And if there's anything I can do to help you out, you can drop me a note on LinkedIn or through my email, and I'd be happy to do that. Susan, thank you very much for the opportunity to share some of this input that I've gained over decades of doing this, both individually and in small groups within our organizations, and finally for larger organizations like AAPG. I'm very happy to help out when I can. Thank you, Susan.
Well, thank you, Bill. This is great. And I think that was perfect timing. I'm not sure if we have much time left, but I would like to encourage everyone to continue to be engaged and to reach out. And if you have any questions, reach out directly to Bill, or I'll be happy to facilitate. And I just really want to thank you, because I think it's often a case where we scramble to try to see what's going on, and we don't step back a minute and sort of self-reflect and actually think about where we'd like to be. So that was really helpful.
So good, appreciate it. See, anything on the chat board there, Susan?
I'm looking here. Well, just lots and lots of compliments. Insightful. Really appreciate it. Important service. Insightful presentation. Great session. So this is great.
Okay.
So I want to thank you, and I don't know if Linda has a few little words to say at the end of catching her off guard, but just want to thank everyone for being here. And just as you are surfing around in the internet, just take a moment to go to our website and click on the annual meeting called Image joint with SEG. And I think you'll see that there's some amazing content and also career-focused items. So anyway, well, thank you, Bill.
Thank you again, Susan, and best of luck to everybody that's been doing your program and everyone else out there.
Thank you.